Hello, everyone. If you want to give us a heads up, if you're just joining us, we would love to have your name and eventually your role in the chat, just so we know if we're just talking the three of us, or if there's some people listening. That would be nice. Jonathan will join us. I think in a second. He just popped up, so he will join us. Okay. So I'm Guillaume. Hi, everyone. I'm supposedly moderating the panel on future of test automation. I'm just a voluntary participant. So I'll quickly introduce myself. I've been doing agile coaching for years and years. And before that, I'm a long-term coder since I was a kid, we could say. So I have a total 20 plus years of experience. So the topic of test automation, whether code or agility and process, have kind of never left me already. I'm very happy to be here and have people to pick brain on. Jill, you want to introduce yourself, and then Eran?
Sure. I'm Gil. I'm from Israel. I'm a trainer, a consultant on all things developers, testers. I've been coding since I was 10, so that's like basics on the spectrum. So I haven't stopped coding and checking things out for like more than 40 years now. So yeah, and I'm happy to be here today to discuss whatever testing subjects we'll come up with.
Hi, everyone. Eran Kinsbrunner. I'm a chief evangelist for Perfecto and Blazemeter. I've been in the software development and testing space for nearly 22 years. Actually, written 4 books about software testing and with AI, without AI, with tools, without tools. So again, happy to be here and discuss, as Gil mentioned, anything about software testing, test automation, and anything else. So really excited.
Awesome. I suggest we're gonna start. I'm not sure when and how Jonathan will start. So we have mashed up a couple of questions among us, and for the people listening, we never met before, right? So we're just getting to know each other here. So that's probably the interesting part of the conversation. I'm just gonna lead simply with the most basic question before we get to the tool. That's my bias. Let's get to the people. Do you have any, first, what's your perspective on the future of the tools themselves on test automation? We have a couple of follow-up questions, but where does your mind go when you think of the tools in the upcoming years? Jill, you want to start?
Okay. This is like a very big question, but it goes along with technology, right? The more technology gets to do more and gets more complex, we need to do more. We need to manage that complexity. So there's one thing though that we use a lot of tools, but they are kind of built for everyone. Like the simplest thing, JUnit, everyone can use for anything. I think the future will be something a bit more vertical, like for different businesses, different kind of industries. There'll be some kind of flavors of this thing that will help manage medical or financial stuff, because I think this will require a leap a bit more than just like what everyone else is using.
So, okay, you're raising the bar by going away from basic tool and starting to talk about the domain and you say medical, financial. Okay. Eran, do you wanna jump onto that or segue completely? Where does your mind look at when we think about the future of the tools in the upcoming years?
So I'm definitely going to take a slightly different approach, and I'm definitely looking forward to see what Jonathan has to complement. We are always complimenting each other, me and Jonathan, for many years now. I think, going back to what Gil started, as technology evolves, but also the processes evolves, I think that tools are going to become very, or actually people are going to become very dependent on the tools in order to be successful in what they are doing. Think about shorter sprint cycles, shorter iterations when you want to release software. Okay, you can only do it with sophisticated tools. People can say, yeah, we don't need automation. They lie. They need automation. If you want to do certain things in a very short amount of time, you need to do it using tools. So I think that the dependencies actually that we are going to have on tools is just going to grow, and it actually puts pressure on the tool vendors to really make these tools top-notch, AI driven, and other sophistications that are coming with this responsibility, just for these guys to become more and more professional and successful in what they're trying to accomplish. I actually just seen this morning a lively and very heated discussion on Cypress, on one of the channels of the Cypress open source community. And, this guy was very dependent on the Cypress framework and its mocking services, okay? The virtualization of different services as part of his, process running thousands of test scenarios. And something went wrong and kind of blocked his entire CI/CD, executions. So that's just kind of an exact example of dependencies that people are growing into into tools today, and not just, by the way, in software testing in general. So I think my point here, dependencies are going to just grow, and I'll just throw it now to Jonathan. I'm excited to see what he has to say about that.
Yeah, I think you've obviously, I love you, Eran. So everything you say is I completely agree with. But that aside, I do think. So obviously, I'm here at KubeCon at the moment, and there's probably 90 different tools to build your K8 deployments. Just what I can see here, right in front of me, and I think there is a role for toolsmiths. Absolutely, yeah, I get that. I guess there's a lot of dependencies on there, but I actually go probably the opposite direction in actually saying I was talking to one of the Forrester analysts earlier yesterday, and then I'm catching up with SD Times today, and but my viewpoint is recently they Gartner published Automation Fabric. Now I got really excited about this. I know, Eran, we talked about this at Star West a few weeks ago because I thought Automation Fabric was going to be the same as Data Fabric was for everybody else. It was, and it kind of is, right? The idea is we bring all of automation together into a universal format. So it doesn't matter if you're doing RPA, operations orchestration. I don't use the word test automation anymore, but let's say automation in general. You bring it all into a centralized area, and it's a universal kind of ability. So if you're trying to do your infinite loop, what doesn't matter if you're in operations or build, it's all automation. So I really see this viewpoint of it's no longer one tool to rule them all. It's more of a collaboration of tools that have to be open enough to be able to put data into that automation data fabric to then allow us to do predictive tech capabilities and harness all the power of what I refer to as kind of exhaust data. So your Cypress libraries or your Playwright libraries or your Perfecto reports all come out into a format that we can digest. That might be some complex schema registry or some kind of Neo4j or some kind of time series InfluxDB thing, or it even could be, which is what I was talking to the guys at the booth next door at Microsoft, it could be Azure Quantum, right? You could start by taking Azure Databricks and then start doing some really cool stuff. But the problem is I feel like what we're missing, and that's where the industry's probably a little bit behind, is everybody else is taking this information and actually then using it, applying machine learning, whether it be AI ops or another team, to actually then give us some insight into what's going on. So partly I put out a bit of a publication the other day around what I'm referred to as an echo database, where it's kind of showing you over time, as you run it against each one of the mobile apps and you're taking screenshots and you're doing computer vision and you're doing all this kind of stuff, it's learning continuously. It's starting to understand your application organically and kind of learn from what you're doing over time, learn that your quality gates are changing. I think this then becomes quality stream management in the same way that value stream management did for the ability to communicate value within the organization. So that's my kind of viewpoint, is we need to now be able to communicate, but also then be able to apply all the stuff Eran and myself, we've done I think during lockdown we did the digital quality, which was machine learning, artificial intelligence in this area. You need that data to be able to then give you that kind of insight. So that's kind of where I would say potentially we're moving. And my job title on here does actually say automation cyborg as well. So it's not like I just changed it because it was a typo. But yeah, so it's great, and I think, I'm really excited about the future. I think the future starts today and how we design I'm not going to use the word frameworks anymore, but our toolsmith craft needs to move forwards.
Okay. So question I hear, expansion of domains, with Gilles, right? We're going towards domains where we cannot cover with just the basic small tools that we used to have. The process have evolved, everything is shorter. And now there's a question whether, I'm feeling, Jonathan, there's also a notion of going away from the purely human-made rule-by-rule automation to get something a little more automated and a little more we observe and learn from our data, and from there build some automation. I think the topic of the dependency was actually an important one in there, because it relates to the question of how we're going to maintain all this over time. So Eran, you say there's going to be a lot more dependency, but wouldn't that backfire at some point? I'm thinking about, well, we talk about Cypress or any tool. I've used Chrome for doing UI testing, and in July, I don't know if you've been part of that, but like just a little glitch, automated update on Chrome, and all the test automation, and you had to wait for them to patch. That dependency will be here. Now, from my basement and very, very humble experience compared to you guys, I have the feeling also that in a basement, we will always have to make our DIY tools, meaning that whatever tools you have, they allow you to cover into a certain area. And usually there's a moment you got to gather up a script, figure out, create your own fix-up to test a thing that nothing else has been testing. Because, of course, it's not tested, the problem's just going to be there at some point. What's your thing on that, between dependency on the tools, doing your own thing? I mean, there's a tension, right, over the time. How do you think this one's going to balance? How do you think the community actually is going to deal with that?
So I can just chime in because I started this nonsense about dependency, so I take responsibility. And I think, you obviously need to have a balance between DIY tools and technologies. And by the way, DIY can also be built on top of open source technologies, which you actually sometimes can control, from security and capabilities and many other dependencies. So I think the word governance should come here into play, especially when you are scaling. And we're just, we are in a testing conference, so I'll just focus on testing here. But when you are scaling your executions, I have a client who is running nearly 2 million executions a quarter, okay? With 2 million executions a quarter, he's dependent on the tools already, okay? His entire pull request and everything that he's doing triggers a large set of executions. And some of the things that he's using in his pipeline are custom specific scenarios. Some are related to existing frameworks that he built in-house, okay? So it's all about how you monitor, govern, and maintain your tool chain. No one is going to do it for you. So I'm not going to make it easy on anyone. When you're starting the journey of testing and test automation, you own it, and you need to responsibly maintain it. Otherwise, it's going to break. And as you scale, the break is going to be more painful, right? Think about 1 million executions just failing because, I don't know, a service is down or something on Amazon, which you're depending on, is not kind of working for you. We have technologies, even within my own products, that are cloud-based. And if something goes wrong, I won't say the word, right? But that's the thing. So it happens. You need to be monitoring your solutions, your services. You need to have mitigation plans for things that are going, wrong. We are just close to the shopping season, right? Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and all these things. this is when things blow up, right? We know it. You need to be prepared. That's my only advice here.
I do have a question for you guys. So we're hearing about these different tools and the notion of dependency. I would love to hear when you come to, I don't know, new project or new area, and you have to pick a testing tool. I don't care if it's management tool. I don't want to know the answer. What criteria are you using to either select the tool or orient your choice? What are the different areas? Okay, Gio.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Gib. All right.
I'll go first.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get everybody to speak at some point.
So I love tools, but that's not the first question I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of, I'm asking my clients, what would you like to learn from your tests? So don't start automating stuff. Don't start using this. Do you know what you're looking for? Because like Eran said, the dependencies, I've been in a situation this week, maybe from last week. People are drowning in logs. Sometimes the automation stops, they don't know why, and they don't even know how the system that they're running the tests in kind of reflects into this log. So they know that something breaks, but what to look for, how to interpret that inside the system that they're running in, and including that their code and their tests, which we're not even there yet, because it doesn't say line number 7 broke. That's a problem, right? So it goes back to, first of all, what are you looking for? What do you want to learn? What are the first things that are important for you? Then the tool will help you. We'll pick the tool that will help you do that. I feel that today people are just going into, well, everybody is working with this tool, so we'll go with this tool, and it will probably help us.
I see. Eran, what criteria guide your mind when you have? So we already heard about what's the purpose of the test. What do you want to learn from the test? Any other criteria come to your mind when you have to pick your testing tool strategy? Feel free to rephrase the question.
So I can actually turn it into the 3 topics that everyone talks about, right? People, process, technology. So people, what skills do I have within my organizations to actually operate and maintain the tools? So that's the skills and the people. The objectives of my testing, as Gil was stating, what I'm trying to accomplish. So I would actually take it to the coverage. Okay, what scenarios am I trying to cover? Sophisticated ones, basic ones. And am I going to use these scenarios every day, every week within CI per each, build, acceptance testing, and so on? How well is this tool integrated? And that's the process. How is the tool or the tools integrated within my entire CI/CD tool chain? Because tools are not coming into a void. They are coming into an existing process where developers and SDETs and testers and business people, product managers, product owners, everyone works together on a product. So the tools need to kind of not disrupt the process, actually support the process. So that's another way or criteria. And lastly, going back to what Gil was saying, and I'm sure Jonathan would agree, how can I learn from my test using logs, reporting, insights? Jonathan, talks a lot about, digital twin, looking at things coming from production, looking at data and analyzing it, looking at how can I learn more and be more effective by looking at my test data, my production data, and things like that. So these tools are my pane of glass, if you like, for how my users are going to see my services, my product features, etc.
Thank you. Yeah, so I can hear your 3 topics. Jonathan, what would you add?
Yeah, so I completely agree with Eran, but I actually was, I am about to, in about half an hour, start writing a test strategy for a large government organization, and my headers are people, process, and technology. So Eran's right on the money. I've got one more that it stuck on top of it, which Gartner would not be happy about, but was adding assurance or assure across the top. It's like, what are we trying to prove by doing all of these steps underneath? And that kind of goes back to what Gil was kind of saying in the sense of, well, what are the goals? Now, interestingly, I got stuck with this because, back in 2003, I published an AMMI, so an automation maturity model, which I actually worked with Dorothy Graham while we were writing one of the experiences in test automation with Alan Page and a few other people. And we started building patterns, which became an automation wiki. Now, the idea was to reuse some of those patterns over time, and I actually had to revisit it and go, is that still relevant? And actually, 2 weeks ago in Hungary, Isabel and a few other people got together and they talked about maybe having a tool profiler or a toolkit profiler, a part of, if you're this type of organization, maybe you should start with, as we've already said, very basic CI/CD, getting the understanding your code coverage and all those kind of basic fundamentals. But then when you try and scale automation in the same way we scale Agile and scale DevOps, then you need to think about different levels of maturity. Then you might even think about modeling. Then you might think about machine learning. But, it's a journey. And so Isabel's actually doing a whole stack of academic research around how do you identify the right tool and technology for your culture. And I'm not usually a big in the academia area. And I did pull out, I wrote a book at the start of the year, Artificial Intelligence for Software Testing with Rex Black. And that was around the ISO 29119 Part 11 for artificial intelligence. And part of it, I think what Isabel raised a really good point is it's not a one approach to rule them all. It's each approach, each client is going to be unique. And actually, on my flight over here to Detroit, I watched The Playlist, which is the story about Spotify. It's on Netflix. I'd recommend everybody here to watch it. And one of the episodes was around the developer. And last week when I was speaking in northern Spain at the QA and Test Embedded, the lady from Spotify Engineering said, I had the chance to talk to her, and she said, of course we don't do the Spotify model anymore because, it's just not suitable for us. But a lot of people try and clone a process because they see the Phoenix project, which I know Joe's talking with Glenn this week. Part of it is, it's not a one solution that fulfills. And what you see from The Playlist is that actually it worked for them in that moment of time. And I think that's what we need to think about for tools and technologies is that what is the organization? What's the culture? What's the people, the process? Once we understand that, we identify it, which is why I think it's really interesting being in this domain, and it's an exciting place for automation people going forwards. But we need to bring that back to an engineering discipline. So yesterday I sat with Scott Moore, and he said the same about performance. Is we need to start bringing a performance advisory council together, or an automation advisory council, or at least having an automation manifesto or some kind of very high level. These are what we're trying to do. We're more interested in observing of observability than results, right? And Iran kind of said it earlier, and I've got the same deadline for the end of the week, which I'm sure everyone else has got. But Diego's got this thing around sustainable development goals, around the fact that you shouldn't just be running 20,000 scripts because it's not great for the environment. You need to start thinking about ethically writing and maintaining and understanding your coverage and optimizing that coverage. And I think that's a different viewpoint. I'm looking at all these KA kind of people, and people are over provisioning. They're having a massive impact. We saw what happened with blockchain and becoming the third biggest polluter of any country. I think we now need to start thinking about that from an automation perspective. Just because we can run 10,000 automation scripts, should we, and what are the value of each one of those scripts? So I think we're in a really new world where we need to have smart people, smart processes, and smart tools.
So I'm hearing a lot. Well, I heard the notion of coverage, and you give us quite a map to look at things. I'm happy we bring up the notion that there's no one size fits all. I heard a lot about iterative approach also. I'd like to zoom back and I connect on some questions submitted earlier on. We mentioned the skills, we mentioned the organization, the skills available when you choose your task. We mentioned the organization. I must say I'm very interested in that because as an Agile coach, usually I love to help organization when they're already very advanced. That's lovely, but most of the time people are just starting, right? And that's always a question: where do you start? What organization you go? One of the questions that popped up with all these toolings is related. Who is actually going to be busy doing these tests, writing these tests, setting up these tools, maybe? And feel free to. That's a question I hear from left and right. Typical cases I could tell, right? You got the one extreme is one QA guy who just decided to go toward automation with his by QA I mean affinity with technology, but not a developer originally. And then you got the other side, which is a developer, extreme programmer, old or young, who just go for it, go for unit test, and then they progress out of that to automation and else. Feel free to begin. My question is, what type of have you identified pattern of organization regarding the creation and maintenance of the tests and the tools around in your career, let's say? And I will start by Eran this time. Jill. Yeah.
So I think we kind of addressed it without naming it, right? Jonathan was just saying, and Gil was saying, what are we trying to accomplish? Jonathan was saying there is no one size fits all. I think that the combination of both statements actually should guide, because like no size fits all, no organization is similar to the others, because they have different objectives, they have different skill set, they have different features that they're trying to develop in a certain amount of time, etc., etc. So I've worked with teams where they have squads which have mixed people, testers, developers, SDETs, product owners, all contributing to quality. So at the end of the day, everyone cares about quality. To your point, you need to have at least one owner of this quality, or at least the strategy and the tools, so it's maintainable over time. I think that, again, I don't have like a silver line or like an answer that David is going to own quality or owning the tools. It's not going to work like that. I think based on the process that you have, let's say you have a 1 week iteration sprint in which 4 people are joining forces together to build the user story points, whatever, and write the test cases. Within this week sprint, they need to build the right process. The tools are a given in my mind. You're not going to invent the tools within the sprint. You have the tools, you have the licenses, you know what you need to do, right? You know what's coming. I think it's up for the feature team, the squad, the agile team, whatever you call that team that is building the product or the feature, to figure it out, again, based on their profile, their times, the coverage, even looking at the past, right? What they learned from previous cycles should guide them also for the future. So I know it's a very complex answer, but it's a very complex question, and a lot depends on where the organization is at this point.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say, to connect back with that, is once you're setting up some new type of test, you ask yourself who wants to learn about it, and that also you hint by that depending on the type of test, you can see a different role actually putting up this test and automation. So that means we're going to deal probably with a community of people working to each taking care of their own interests, let's say, but all around automation.
It's always a joint of people. It's never one person that owns quality or is responsible for the product quality. You can see the Agile Manifesto. You're an Agile coach, right? You can see the Agile Manifesto. You can see the DevOps Manifesto. It's a combination of people, processes, technologies that aim to release, high quality features or value to their customers. So it's in any case going to be a mix of practitioners that own the entire aspect of quality.
Jill or Jonathan, do you have something? It seemed like a very synthetic thing. Do you have an opposing point of view? Are you supporting that?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'd say a slightly. So as I was going through and putting this strategy and adding this level of assurance, I think, one of the problems is quality is quite subjective, is that we say everyone's responsible for quality, but really that means no one's responsible for quality. So part of having this assurance role is that, the old view of having a quality assurance or, quality engineering is completely different to testing over here. Part of it is there's different stakeholders, and we talked about this idea of potentially shift up. How do you become an ambassador within your organization to actually then articulate what quality means in testing across the stakeholders? That's all the way up to the C-suite. That might be all the way through to, in the same way that we would do it at a portfolio level in something like SAFe. So part of it is, I completely agree. There's going to be communities of practice. There's going to be centers of enablement for large organizations. I think all that stuff's going to happen. But individual teams can't be responsible. They have to be able to articulate quality stream management, quality lifecycle management across the entire organization. And I think that is a bit of a culture shift. It's also a different type of person. Iran, we've done in the books before, but, the 10-man, the fifth man rule, whatever, in Israel, where they kind of say someone plays devil advocate and has to be on part of that board. And whatever someone says, well, what happens if the mobile app goes down? What happens if, AWS authentication goes down? They need to be there to do that. Whether that is a new type of role, a new breed, we don't know. However, I do think the skills that if you were starting out as a tester today are going to change. And as part of what I wanted to add in there, so actually this, spoiler alert, but I took on a new trainee or a mentor or a Padawan learner, and a lady called Lady Low Code is what she refers to herself as. And she's a big advocate of low code solutions, right? And I think the problem is we're talking about low code and we're talking about no code. And, part of it is, well, what does that actually mean? Does that mean it's an SDED that's evolved into leveraging things like the Perfecto platform, where it's much more low code than, getting down and doing the underwriting scripts like you would in Playwright or Cypress? So my question is, is that person more domain focused? Do they have more subject matter expertise around the domain and the context around there? And I think there is a balance there. I think we've kind of tried to go software developer and test. Oh, by the way, you should be a developer. And then, we've lost that magic, which is what the testers are. So there's a big play what I'm going for, and hopefully it'll be me and Iran trying to get to the market first on this one next year. But obviously, for people who know people like James Bark, he was working with Tricentis on creating, in essence, session-based testing. And what that does is a way of capturing all of the tasks, I'm setting up environments, I'm, spinning up these containers, I'm doing these testing, and observe all of that to understand holistically how a tester works. And what we're building at the moment, or my R&D team are building back in Cambridge, is actually in essence a test browser that is a browser that's just designed for testing, where it plugs in things like Iran's tool that gives observability to the stack, the trace analytics. It gives the information about what data you should do. So Iran, your TDM engine would pull in. So when an exploratory tester is going through, it says, oh, you should use these login credentials. But at the same time, behind it, it's capturing all the events and then sending it over and auto-generating Selenium scripts. It's creating JMeter and Taurus scripts. It's looking at security and going and creating Zap tests. It's doing all of this thing because part of it is we test in a completely different way. And it's not just a browser, it could be anything, right? But I think this is the big way, is that actually we need to give testers superpowers through tooling. And those superpowers are things like being able to go to Perfecto and spin up millions of devices or do performance.
So to interrupt you, I would like, do you need to wrap up or could you wrap up? I would love to see, we have questions coming up and we are 10 minutes from the end. I would love to hear you tackling these questions. Shall we move on to this? Did you want to finish your sentence? Or?
I just want to add something here that my friends are very optimistic. I'm not. Usually what happens is that organization or culture just break things down to where people need to be. They direct people and knowledge and skill. So unless I put on my optimistic agile hat and let people decide what to do, the organization will decide what to do. It's going to be a clash between the people who want to innovate and to adopt new things and the culture itself. That's, again, why startups are more innovative and big organizations are less so.
I must say personally, any big automation initiative or test I've seen rising from the ground and developing has almost been a form of a hacker's period. It's people who have enough, say, credit, so their manager is not after them, and they work on it almost in the shadow. It doesn't appear on the board, and someday they have new things popping up. I don't know how much that scaled though, but I'm the most successful one were just guys doing their own thing to make their work.
I think you're part of it. You have to be positive, right? I've been doing test automation for 25 years. I know Iran's done 22, and I've engaged with over 100 customers in that time. I was global head of automation for Deutsche Bank, and I was responsible for automating 2,700 apps across 14,000 endpoints. I've seen automation work. I've seen automation fail. You know, I think we're on a new era. This is where we're starting to see people evolving the platforms and technology that we need. You know, Henrik's here from Dynatrace, and, you know, I'm sat there going through and doing pinpoint failure analysis, root cause analysis. I've got my friend Colton at Gremlin over there talking about chaos engineering and site reliability testing. You know, we are wanting to move the industry forward. We're through open testing, open telemetry. It is a brave new world. I just think at the same time, we need to pull that back into some of the lessons that we've learned before in the past. So, you know, I know there's a lot of questions there. I think we answered the one around manual testing and giving powers of, you know, the ability of maybe session-based testing. But the other thing I wanted to add in there, as you know, is actually my good friends at Test.ai. You know, actually, when we were, myself and Iran was at Star West, there's a tool called dev-tools.ai. It's 3 lines, a bit like Applitools used to be, and it can add AI into your any language, Playwright, Java, Selenium, Python, whatever you want. 2 lines, you get all the self-healing DOMs. And the thing is, I just want us to, in a way, it's hashtag ban all frameworks, is we don't need to build another framework. We've boldly gone where no one has gone before. Iran made Quantum Framework, which was the best framework ever written with BDD. No one used it. And it wasn't because it wasn't the best. It was because we don't need frameworks now. We need the ability to deliver and actually restore some faith back in what automation is. 20% of organizations are doing automation. And that is just appalling. You know, it's not any better than it was in the 90s. So, you know, come on, guys, this is the time for us to grow up, not just write another framework and play around with some new code. Let's start moving the industry forward.
I'm so glad you brought that up, that because my question was, how do we not just talk among like a couple of elite that do testing? I must say, I changed location now, and let's say these old beautiful testing skills are not very easy to find around. So I can realize we can go crazy about things. The question is how we bring people in from base. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, you have your eyes on the question. So manual testing and test automation. You just gave an answer. Which one do we want to play with? Simply put, I love the practicality of this one. API testing. Is it easier to just write your own tools, more efficient, write your own testing things, or use tool for automated tests? And then which one? Who wants to answer that?
I'll throw mine in first. So up9.com, my good friend Alon, who was the creator of BlazeMeter and also the creator of JMeter as the standard. Up9.com, Mitsu, Macintosh, you know, all of that open source stuff, you know, is using AI to automatically create all of the request response pairs, whether you've got a Swagger spec, an open 3.1 spec, it just does it all for you. However,
can you repeat the URL?
It's up as in UP and then 9 as in the number 9.com. And, you know, he's at the absolute forefront of API testing. You know, I know Iran could do some good stuff as well. But, you know, part of why I'm saying that is that my big play for next year is lifecycle virtualization, which is network function virtualization, network virtualization, service virtualization, and application virtualization. It's the 4 legs of virtualization, the ability to test an entire complex system on your local laptop without needing any upstream or downstream systems. APIs is part of that. We know it is. Go and check out up9.com, and of course, you know, Iran's tools.
Okay. More on the people type of thing. what kind of expert profiles do you expect to be popular and needed? Anyone want to pick the question? Feel free to reformulate if you prefer, of course. Who else want to take? I would look at Gilles and Eran because Jonathan, you just picked the previous one.
Profile. I think that you have like it's like the people process technology. You have an expert on each, but I think the knowledge of everything that we're using, like the meshing of processes and tools, who will know what to do, what tool to bring for our process, or if we want to move our process forward, what kind of tool will we need, what skills do we have today. So you have like pockets of knowledge. I think a community of practices and knowledge will have to come in. You can't have like just one super person with superpowers, whatever tools they have to collect all this information. So I think it'll be different kinds of experts. We kind of can imagine very much the tooling expert, right? I am an expert on this, this, and this, and I can do some specific domain thing, either technological API testing or finance, insurance, something. But I think that the knowledge accumulation is so big, can be held by one person, never, even in one organization. So I think we're talking about a web or a mesh of people, a community that will hold these kind of things and train other people, rise them up, train them, because the expert names or expert roles would be kind of very fluid, I think.
Okay.
I just want to say one comment. I think that, the word expert here can be very tricky, because like quality, expert is a moment in time. If you don't train, if you don't educate yourself as you educate your team, you're no longer an expert. You can call yourself an expert, but you aren't. So you need to continuously learn. Again, I'm not just talking about new tools and technologies. You need to continuously learn about how to be the continuous expert within your domain. Otherwise, we're just wasting time for everyone. So the education, the training here, in my mind, is something that any expert, and I agree with Gil, right? It's a mesh of multiple experts in specific domains, but these guys needs to, own this title by continuously learning and educating themselves so they can be the go-to person by their team. So that's an important thing to mention.
I'd like to add something because that's something I've seen around my career, and also before that I was like enterprise consultant and software developer. One thing I've seen so many times when I also triggered by the notion of expert, self-created expert or expert coming into or being in a company, putting a fantastic amount of effort and tools together, doing a breakthrough, honestly. But from there, it was so far advanced, the adoption, the step was too high for adoption. You also have the guy who doesn't want to share and everything, right? The guy, the lady, or whatever. But one expert making a breakthrough won't make the thing happen. It will die over time, because the thing is, if I'm connecting it to what you guys have said, you need a wider adoption if you want really the thing to work. I think I've picked from you guys, community of people, different angle, different domain, different area of concern, different set of skills. So that's why I'm also a little bit triggered. So I don't know, if by expert, it's an expert in transmitting and onboarding people to what they do, then to me, that's the style of expert that I'm hearing. I'm waiting for us to be kicked out, but if you guys have a little more time, there's a curveball, a wet question I like. It's not from me, it's from Tim Ferriss. What mistake do you see even expert doing? What beginner mistake do you see even expert or very advanced people doing, in your opinion? Who wants to start?
What Eran said about the snapshot, the snapshot at time. It changes like that.
The snapshot, sorry?
That you're an expert at this point on something, and a minute after that, you're no longer an expert.
Oh, money. Okay, thanks. Jonathan, a mistake you see people doing even when they're supposed to be well level.
I think I already mentioned it earlier on, but applying the same patterns and methodologies and expecting the same outcomes, right? I think this is the way we see organizations, even system integrators, will bring in a pattern which works somewhere else, and they expect it to work there in the same way and have the same outputs. Now, that's just how it is, and I think that's where there's a craft still left in. I've never used the word expert in my entire life because X is an unknown quantity, and well, the rest of it. But part of it is we learn a trade. I think we're toolsmiths. We learn our kind of we have to keep relevant. But in actual fact, my same advice last week at a conference was the tools will change. Just learn the domain. Be a good tester, because that's what's really important. Be content aware, understand your domain, and you'll have a job for life.
I'm afraid I will have to cut you. We've been called by the patrol. I'm supposed to say bye, and I still don't know how to roll out the credits. Maybe a right click or something. I was supposed to be trained. I don't know how to do this.